There was once a little boy that constantly, no matter what corner he turned, he always seemed to get frustrated and angry. So much so that his parents began to notice the outburst. And so his dad decided to sit him down and have a conversation. He said, "Son, I see that every day, in every situation, it doesn't matter if you're at home with your friends or at school, you seem to always get frustrated." "Yeah, Dad, and I don't know what to do about it." So his dad hands him a bag of nails. And he tells his son, "Here's what I want you to do. Every time you get frustrated, I want you to go out to the backyard. I want you to take a nail, and I want you to hammer it into the fence." Sounds easy, right? So every day, that first day it comes, and he finds himself in the backyard just hammering a nail. And again, same day, hammering a nail. And it just seemed like that no matter what he did, and no matter how many nails he put into the fence, he always found himself back there hammering a nail. And it just kept going and going. On that very first day, he gets to the end of the day and he says, "Dad, today I hammered 37 nails. Son, that's okay. Maybe tomorrow it'll be less." And so he finds himself the next day with another nail, hammering the fence, driving it in, getting even frustrated with the nails, because sometimes, if you're like me, when you're hammering a nail, as hard as you hit, sometimes they bend. Sometimes they don't go in as easy as I want. And so every day, he just kept hammering the nails. Frustration. We all know what it's like. We've all been there. We've metaphorically approached the fence and hammered the nails just as this young boy did. Every day, he hammered the nails. And each day, as the days passed, they got less and less and less. And here's what I've discovered about frustration. Frustration is a reflection of your heart and mind. It's really a reflection of what's going on inside of us, what's going on around us, and the way that we portray or live out in the world that we're in. And so maybe for you, you find yourself not necessarily hammering a nail into the fence, but you find yourself feeling frustrated about the station of life that you're in. Maybe the job that you're a part of, maybe the people you're doing life with. Maybe it's in your marriage or your finances or just your kids, whatever it is, you find yourself being frustrated. And that frustration, it leads you to become angry and disappointed and discouraged. Because frustration is a feeling. It's a feeling of dissatisfaction, often accompanied by annoyance or anger. You've been there. You've had those moments. Those moments where you look back and you say, I wished I wouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I wouldn't have responded that way or acted that way. And we find ourselves in a place of frustration. And again, frustration is a reflection of your heart, what's going on inside of you. And so for the next few moments, here's what I want to ask you to do. I want to ask you to look deep within. Deep within, and just simply ask the question, what is it that irritates you? What is it that just drives you mad? That just, it gets your blood boiling. If you could just fix this one problem, everything else would be okay. Just settle in for just a moment. And I want you to hang on to that. Because what we're going to discover is frustration's not something that's new. It's not something that only you and I experience. It's been something that has been a part of humanity for a long time. And so if you have your Bibles this morning, I want to ask you to turn to Numbers chapter 20. And we're going to find ourselves in the middle of Moses' life. Moses was charged with freeing the people from Egypt. God put a specific and unique call on his life, and he says to Moses, "Moses, here's what I want you to do. I want you to free my people." Say, what? Do you got the right guy? Have you not looked at my life? Have you not looked at some of the things that I have done, the way that I have acted? I've murdered someone. I've ran from everything. Are you sure it's me? Moses, it's you. I want to use you, but I'm not the best candidate for the job. There are so many others that are better than me. No, Moses, I want you. And so Moses takes up the charge that God puts before him, and he takes the people out of Egypt into what we know as the wilderness. And so Moses finds himself wandering around in the wilderness day after day, month after month, year after year, to where we find ourselves here in Numbers chapter 40, where they had been in the wilderness for almost 40 years. 40 years. I mean, imagine what it's like. I'm a parent, and I can remember when my kids were young and we would go on a road trip, specifically going back home to visit our family in Texas or going back to Arkansas, and we would drive. And driving with two young kids at the time, oh, it was frustrating. I mean, in the beginning, it was great. And then we get to Tucson. Are we there yet? No, we're in Tucson. Are you sure we're not there? I promise we're not there yet. And you're trying everything within your power as a parent. What can I do to satisfy my kid, to just shut him up for just a moment? To be frustrated. And this was Moses finding himself leading the people into the wilderness. And the people constantly questioning, are we there yet? Moses, we don't have this. Moses, we need this. The people being frustrated with Moses, asking the question, why are we here? Why did we even follow you? What were you thinking? Are you sure God even cares about us? Because it feels like I'm out here all alone by myself with no hope and nowhere to go. And then we find ourselves in Numbers chapter 20, starting in verse 1. It says, in the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed in Kadesh. There, Miriam died and was buried. Miriam is Moses' sister. So if you don't know that, that's his sister, and she has just passed away. Now, there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. Again, imagine the situation. You had been wandering around in the desert, looking and hoping that you were going to arrive at your destination. You wanted to hear the GPS say, you have arrived. You are here. This is what you've been waiting for. But the people became very frustrated, discouraged, disappointed, wondering and questioning. And because of that, they began to oppose Moses and Aaron. It says in verse 3 that they quarreled with Moses, and they said, if only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grain or figs, grapevines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. It is a scene of desperation. Desperation to the 100th power. Desperation to where they're like, we cannot survive. We need water. Moses, what were you thinking? And understanding this is coming off of his sister just passing. How do you think Moses felt? A little frustrated, a little annoyed. I've been here the whole time, people. God has shown up every time that we've needed him to show up. What do you mean, where's the water? God will provide. He's always provided. And you've had those desert moments in your life where you've been just like the people of Israel, where you've cried out to God and you said, why? Why? You've been frustrated. You've been the one standing at the fence, nailing the nails into the wood, saying, God, why? Why am I here? Why is this happening? And typically what happens when we become frustrated, in moments of frustration, it's easy for you and I to point fingers and to assign blame. It's easy because for the people of Israel, they wanted to simply blame Moses. Moses, why? This isn't where we're supposed to be. This isn't our destiny. This isn't our future. Why are we here? And the same thing's true in your life and in mine. When we get into frustration situations, what do? We blame someone else. They started the argument. I didn't. They're the one that said the negative statements about me. I didn't. They're the ones that didn't care for me when I needed somebody the most. If my boss would pay me more, then it would just solve all my problems. And we just become frustrated. And so we start blaming and we start pointing the fingers. When I was a kid with my siblings, my mom would always tell us, hey, when you point the one, there's how many pointing back at you? Okay, nobody else? Just me? All right, there we go, 4. My mom used to always tell me that because I always blamed somebody else for whatever situation I got myself into. I always blamed them. It was their fault. If they would have just done, if they could have just been, then none of this would have happened. And we become frustrated, and much like that boy, we find ourselves nailing the nail into the fence, hammering it in, wondering, will this ever go away? And then we begin to oppose the people that are around us, just like these people did with Moses. Moses, why? I don't get it. This isn't what you promised. This isn't what you told us was going to happen. Why are we here? I want you to see how he responds. Look at verse 6. Moses and Aaron, they went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of the meeting, and they fell face down. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so that their livestock can drink. So their immediate response, Moses and Aaron, their immediate response wasn't just to attack the people back. I know what happens when we get into frustration situations, when people attack us or oppose us or push back. We naturally, within ourselves, we fight. We fight. Oh, you got it wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the farthest thing from the truth. But look at how Moses and Aaron responded. Their first response wasn't to argue back. It was simply to go before God, to find themselves falling face down. God, we're in a difficult situation. It's a season that we didn't expect to be in. We thought that we had done everything right up to this point, so we don't know why we're here, but we are. And so, God, out of your mercy and your grace and your love for us, what do you want us to do? It's a moment of desperation. It's a moment of, here we are. We're in this situation, and there's no turning back now. I mean, we've been here for 40 years. So let's just keep going. So, God, what do you want from us? What can we do? God, what can you do? Because we've done everything within our own power that we can do. So, God, what can you do? See, instead of reacting impulsively, as Jesus followers, we're called to respond with faith, trusting in God's provision and his timing. Instead of reacting impulsively, instead of responding out of emotion, we're to act in faith. And we're to trust that God will provide and that his timing is good. It's good. But only if God knew. He does. He knew exactly where Moses and Aaron were. He knew exactly what was going on. He knew that the people were frustrated. And so he gave them a simple solution. Hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go over to those rocks, and I want you to tell those rocks, you're going to speak to it, and water's going to come. Is it really that easy? Faith is that easy. It's about stepping. It's about trusting. That God's way is better than your way or my way. That his provision for you is enough. That his timing is just right. Are you sure it's just right? But then look at how Moses and Aaron respond. Go to verse 9. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron, they gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arms, and he struck the rock twice with his staff. The water gushed out, and the community and their livestock, they drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land that I've given them." These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord and where he was proved to be holy among them. I mean, on first glance, it looks like that Moses and Aaron, they're doing the right thing. The people, they come, and out of that frustration, instead of responding to the people, they find themselves face down before God. God, what do you want us to do? God, you're the only one that can show up. You're the only one that can provide. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to speak to the rock, and water will come. But he still harbored some anger, some resentment, some frustration of his own. Almost to the sense of, yeah, I was obedient and I listened and I followed God, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to take sort of what he said and I'm going to do it my way because I seem to know better than God. And so what does Moses do? Out of that rebellious anger, he lashes out at the people. And instead of speaking to the rock, he takes his staff and he bangs it. He hits it. And God is still faithful, and God still shows up, and God still provides. But there was a consequence. There's always a consequence when you and I are disobedient to God. There's always a consequence. Maybe it becomes a broken relationship that never gets healed. Maybe it's a wayward child that never comes back. Maybe it's whatever it is, you fill in the blank. There's always a consequence. And so out of their disobedience, God tells Moses and Aaron, because you didn't trust me, because you didn't listen to me, you will not enter into the promised land. Someone else will take my people. It won't be you. But even in their disobedience, even in their moments of weakness, even in our moments of weakness, God calls us to be obedient and to be faithful. He calls you and I to be obedient and faithful, even in our weakness. And so on the surface, you could say, well, he did okay. I mean, yeah, it wasn't exactly the way that God wanted, but they still got water. God still provided. He still met a need. He did, but it was in spite of Moses and Aaron. So what happens and how do you and I respond when we become frustrated? How should we respond when you and I become frustrated? Because let's be honest with each other. We are going to become frustrated. It's inevitable. It will happen. You and I will be just like Moses and just like Aaron. We will be just like the people of Israel. We will become frustrated. So how do we respond when we become frustrated? It starts with patience. Being patient with those that are in your life. Being patient with the situation that you're in. Trusting that God will do what God says he will do. To be patient. To not run ahead. In James 1:19-20, it says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and to become angry. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." Patience. Be patient. How do we respond to frustration? We start with patience. And then we move to trusting in God's timing and his plan. Trusting that God is at work and that God is going to do what only he can do. Trusting him. Trusting that this is the right time and this is the right plan, and I can anchor to that and know that God is going to show up and that God is going to work. It may not be the way that I want him to do it, but he's still going to show up and he's still going to work. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Trust. Trust his timing, his plan. What else do we learn from them? Pray. What was their first response? Their first response was the right response. They simply fell down face first before God. Here we are. They got into a posture of surrender. Here I am, God. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help them. I don't know where we're going to get water. I don't know how we're going to provide. God, here we are. To simply go before God and to pour out your heart. To be able to say, I'm afraid. I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what to do from here. But God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe in you. I'm going to believe in you that every time that I get frustrated, every time I nail and hammer these into the wood, you were there. You were with me. You were walking with me. And it was in that time of prayer that they began to seek wisdom. They wanted God's wisdom, not their own, because we know how they're going to respond because we saw a part of his response. His response was, forget you guys. I don't care about you. I'm mad at you. Why are you frustrated with me? You being frustrated with me caused me to be frustrated with you. I mean, he sought God's wisdom and God provided and gave him away. He said, Moses, it's simple. Take your staff, go, speak to the rocks, and water will come. And partially out of obedience, he did exactly what he was asked. He took the staff and he went. But I assume that when he got there and he saw the people again, and he began to replay the encounter that he previously had with them, that all that frustration and all that anger, it came back. I'll show you. And he smacks the rock. And so where does that leave us? Because we see the response from God. He still provided for the people, but yet there was a consequence for Moses and Aaron. See, that young boy every day found himself out there nailing or hammering those nails. And then one day, months later, he came to his dad all excited. Dad, you won't believe it. I didn't hammer any nails today. Dad, I didn't get frustrated today. I didn't hammer any nails. He said, son, that's great. Here's what I want you to do. Every day that you don't get frustrated, I want you to go to that fence and I want you to pull out a nail. Every day. Just pull one nail out. For every day that you don't get frustrated. So every day he went to the fence that he didn't get frustrated and he pulled a nail. And it seemed to get easier as the days went by. And every day another nail came out. And something within him just began to well up, this excitement, this, wow, I've got this. This works. God is doing something. The Father, he knew exactly what I needed when I needed it. And so every day he went and another nail. Weeks went by. More nails came out and months. And he could see the light at the end of the tunnel because he wasn't getting frustrated. There was something within him that was different. There was this joy that overwhelmed him. And as he got closer and closer, as the days counted down to where there was almost no nails left, he just kept pulling. He just kept pulling And then that last day, he shows up. There's one nail left. He pulls out the nail, and with excitement, he runs to his father, and he's like, Dad, you won't believe it. You won't believe what happened today. I pulled the last nail out of the fence. He said, son, that's amazing. That is awesome. And he put his arm around him and he said, come with me. And he took him to that fence and he said, son, what do you see? Dad, I see a lot of holes. And it was in that moment that the son realized that his frustration, it hurt a lot of people. And it left a lot of holes. But here's the beauty of what we see with God. And what we see with this father is he looks at his son and he says, son, yeah, there's a lot of holes, but you need to know that you've been forgiven, that I love you. See, the father does something that only the father can do. He extends forgiveness. No matter how many times we've hurt someone, no matter how many times we have said things and done things that we wished we would have never done, even though Moses disobeyed God, God still forgave him. Yeah, there was a consequence for his actions, but God still forgave him. No matter how many times he left holes, God still showed up. God still extended his grace and his forgiveness. The same way that he does for you and for me. And yes, you and I are going to get frustrated. And yes, we're going to hurt people and we're going to say things and do things that we wished we would have never done. But forgiveness changes that. Forgiveness brings healing that it can only bring. But for me to truly understand and experience forgiveness, I have to experience the forgiveness of the Father. That out of his love for you and for me, that he took his own son and he was nailed to a cross. And there were holes that were placed in his body so that you and I could experience forgiveness. Forgiveness that only the Father could provide. I don't know where you are. I don't know what's going on in the middle of your life right now. And if you're like me, you've hurt people. You've gotten frustrated. You've let people down. But there's forgiveness. And his forgiveness, he's waiting for you and I to respond to him, to trust him. That he meets us right where we are. But the beauty of that son and that father is the father didn't leave his son where he was. And he won't leave us where we are. Will you pray with me? Father, I know it's just a hammer and some nails and some holes in a piece of 2x4. But when I think about just my own moments in my life where I've gotten frustrated, where I've been disappointed, where I've disappointed others, where I've hurt people, and yet you're still there waiting to extend forgiveness. When I see how Moses initially began his response, this response of just finding himself face down before you. Father, give us that posture to be patient, to be kind, to be comforting, to be slow, to listen to what it is that you want to do in our lives. And so, Father, in these next few moments, as we prepare to respond to you, help us. Help us to know that no matter how many holes we've put in the fence, that you're waiting to forgive us. So, Father, let us today experience that forgiveness. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Will you stand?